All right, welcome everybody. This is James Orr. It is 6 o'clock on June 20th, 2017. So this week's going to be a lot different than we normally do. I just got back from vacation, so I didn't have quite as much time to prepare for this week, and the topic wasn't one that I really was super excited about teaching anyway. It's basically mock tenant screening. So we are going to teach a class on tenant screening. But I'm going to show you primarily some of the new stuff I've been working on for Nomads, which is going to be coming. So a couple things before we get started. For those of you that don't know, if you go to the learntobерich.com website, it's got a whole bunch of stuff on here about getting started and stuff. But on the left-hand side, it shows you the local meetups and classes. So tonight is supposed to be mock tenant screening. The description for the class is here. You need to RSVP for the class in order to be on the live webinar. Oh, another thing, I didn't do any emails or promotion or anything for tonight's class, so I have no idea if it's just going to be me and Michael on the call or if it's going to have a couple other people pop on. But I don't expect a very large attendance tonight, which is why I'm just going to kind of do the recording. I'll get the recording up, which is the next thing I was going to tell you is that once the class is done, provided technology cooperates, knock on wood, we will post the video recording right here on this page. It'll actually show up right here for the class. Then come Friday, I think, the class from last week appears here and the reservation starts for next week's class. And so you might say to me, hey, listen, I want to watch the class from last week. That's great. It appears on here for a couple days, and then it moves to the last week's class and appears here. Then once it rolls off there, it goes into the premium Nomad section, which is available for any of the premium nomads that have paid to become premium nomad. They get access to all the past classes. So the coming classes that we have, this is a list of the schedule for the upcoming classes for the year. It's sort of at the bottom of this page. We do a class just about every week. I shouldn't say every week because I do have a couple days in here that I have decided to take off, like Thanksgiving and last couple weeks of the year for Christmas, and there's I think one or two weeks that may not have a topic because I may take holidays or something like that there. So you'll see the list of the different classes that we have coming up. A couple of things that we have coming up soon are tenant buyer sales and marketing. This class is going to be about tenant buyers. Tenant buyer is a tenant who also has an option to buy the property. And one of the things we recommend for nomads to do if they've got extra down payment and they're trying to speed up the process is you can put tenant buyers in the properties. In addition to that, you can use tenant buyers as your exit strategy. If anyone has read the book, if you go up to here and you click on Nomad book, I'll open another tab and I'll show you that. But basically, this allows you to pick your city and state. For example, I'll do Colorado and pick Fort Collins, and it will show me, the whole book on how to do the entire lease option, exit Nomad model for whatever city you pick, and then it shows you all the stuff in here, and you can go look at the different years and everything else. So you can go read that online. It's completely free. Okay, so if you're asking about the tenant buyer stuff, there's going to be a whole class on the psychology of tenant buyers, how to do marketing to find tenant buyers, what they're thinking, questions you get on the phone, all the different things you want to know about tenant buyers is going to be next week on June 27th. So that'll be a week from tonight on Tuesday. Also notice Donna just joined us. Hello, welcome, Donna. And then the week after that is the $5,000 lease demystified. So kind of long story with the lease here. The lease was a lease. So the lease that I've used personally is a lease from a course that I purchased. I purchased, one of those real estate investing guru courses. Probably, it's got to be at least a decade ago now. Let's see, back in, I want to say 2002 or 3. And I bought the lease then, and I've been using that lease with a couple little modifications I made to it personally over the years. And I'm a real estate broker here in Northern Colorado, and clients have been asking me for a long time, James, do you have a lease I could use? And I didn't have a lease that I could give them because I didn't own the rights to the lease. So Brian actually went and had a lease kind of done by an attorney. Brian's a client of mine, my best friend here in town. And he went and had another lease done by an attorney. And so we decided what we were going to do after a while. I talked to Tammy. We decided we were going to combine some of the parts from the lease that I've been using, some of the parts from Brian's lease, and some other parts from leases we found. Have an attorney go through it, make sure that it was totally copacetic to use, at least here in Colorado, kind of make the lease. And so we have now a lease that I give to clients, and it's called the $5,000 lease because between the costs for the course to get the original lease and the cost to have the attorney kind of approve it and everything else. I have about $5,000 into the lease. So it cost me about $5,000 in order to have a lease to provide to you. And I usually provide that to clients buying houses for free. So that's one of the things that I do. So this class coming up on July 11th, oh, you'll notice there's a week off here too for July 4th. So there's no class the week of July 4th. Just realized that July 27th and it skips to July 11th. So on July 11th, though, we are going to do a class on the $5,000 lease demystified. And I've got a surprise for you, because I had originally planned to just kind of teach the lease and scroll through it and talk about it, but I thought better of it. And so what I've started to do, and what I think I'll end up continuing doing, is what I call the lease annotated. And so what this is I went through and I put my lease onto our website, and I'm not done with it yet, but I'll show you a preview of what's to come on the July 11th class. On the lease, on the website now will be the lease itself, and you'll be able to go through and see the lease agreement, and that's going to be in blue. So any of the blue boxes is actual content of the lease. And then it'll show you a section of it. I will then tell you what that section is about. I'll describe what's happening and why we use it. And I will talk to you about any concerns you might have about this section. You know, here's why we have this in here, and what the things we're trying to avoid are, and so on and so forth. And then I will also show you a filled in section. So the blue one is the blanks, which is what the lease looks like. The yellow section is what I might fill in the lease with to be able to see it. So that's sort of the thought process behind doing that. And then we will go through this thing one section at a time and allow you to see and me comment on the lease and go through it and talk about it in detail. So that is coming. That is going to be on, let's see here. I can pull it up. Oops. That is going to be on July 11th. So July 11th, we're going to go over the lease in its entirety. You will know more about the lease because you're going to need to explain it. One of the things we do as a Nomad is you sit down with your tenants coming in and you say, okay, let's go over the lease together, because you really want to make sure they understand all the terms of the lease, because the lease manages the agreement you have with your tenant. And so you're going to go through and talk about each section and what's covered in there. So you will need to be good at explaining the lease. So I am going to give you the tools to be able to explain that. I'm going to go into detail as to what the section's about and why we have certain things the way we do. And so you will be better at it. One thing I thought about doing, and I haven't decided to do this yet, but one thing I did think about doing, and there's some pros and cons to doing it, and I'll probably discuss those during the lease class. But what occurred to me was maybe I should make a video where I personally go through the lease as if I'm explaining it to your tenant, and you could have the tenant actually watch the video and have me describe the lease to them and kind of why we do that. I haven't decided to do that yet. There's definitely some major downsides to doing it. One is you really want to go and look deep into the eye of your tenant and say, hey, listen, you do understand you cannot smoke in this property. And if you do, you will be evicted and there will be fines to you. Okay? And I can't quite do that and force them to sit down and watch it with me. You know, they could say, oh yeah, I watched the video, I'm good to go. And they scan through part of it and stop watching after a little bit. So it's hard for me to force them to watch a 30-minute video on going over the lease. And you will want to sit down with them for 30 minutes and go over it, because you want to tell them the rules about your property and make sure that they're in compliance. Okay, so that's the $5,000 lease class coming up on July 11th. And then we're going to talk about property management mastery. That's coming up on July 18th. For me, we did a whole section previously, and I'll tell you the classes that we've done before. I'll scroll down and show you those in a second. We did classes on tenant screening, how to do marketing in order to find tenants. So those are the last couple classes we did. Property management, in my mind, is different. Property management is stuff you do once the tenant is already in the property. And it's dealing with you know, how to manage your property. There's another class we have coming up, which is solving tenant challenges. What do you do when your tenant doesn't pay their lease on time? What do you do if they park a car in their driveway and the car is up on blocks and, you know, you're getting citations from your HOA about them having a car there? How do you deal with those things, tenant challenges? That class is on August 1st, but the property management mastery about how to manage your property, what you do when your property's there, that's going to be on July 18th. And then between those is the lease option. That's going to be part 2 of the $5,000 lease demystified. I haven't actually done this part yet, and so I need to get off my butt and actually get that done for you. But I've been using a lease that I have, again, from a course. Some of my clients have been using ones from attorneys. I will need to go and pay to have the attorney prepare one that I can go give away to everyone else and go ahead and do that. So those are the kind of upcoming classes. If you want to see the rest of the classes, I kind of covered the first 4 or 5 or so that we've got coming up. But if you want to see what the schedule is for the rest of the year, you can go right to the learntoberich.com meetup page, which is right here. Click on that link, and right down below the reservation link or the videos is going to be your class schedule for upcoming classes. And then underneath that are all the previously recorded classes that we have on here. And we started, Michael had asked before we started the call, when did I start doing these videos? We really started the cycle over again. I mean, I've been teaching classes here in Northern Colorado since 2003. We just had our 14th year anniversary for our investor club. So I've been doing it forever. But we just started doing the video webinars basically on January 3rd is when we started the cycle over. And so if you look at January 3rd through what we have not last week, but the week before on June 6th, which was tenant screening. So you can see all of the classes that we've recorded here. And if you want to go, you can go click on a link and it will open up the actual page showing you the class. And some of the content is reserved for premium nomads, but there's some stuff you can see on there. So you can go look at all that too. And all the classes are available up there with recordings. Most of the classes are video for, and what's here, right? Because most of the classes are not what we're doing tonight. Most of the classes are about an hour and a half to 2 hours long of just content, PowerPoint presentation with a little video of me on the side showing you the class and describing what's going on wherever the class topic is. Tonight's very different because we're showing you some stuff. I'm going to show you some new tools, but most of the classes are not like tonight. They're actually videos showing you the actual presentation we do for that particular topic. Okay, any questions on schedule stuff before I jump into kind of the story of tenant screening? And then I'll show you the new tools I'm creating for you, which are not completely done, but I'll show you kind of the path we're heading and kind of get your feedback on it before I spend another few more days working out the rest of it. Any questions? You guys can use the chat window or Q&A. It doesn't matter to me if you have questions. We only have a few people on tonight, so I don't expect a lot of participation, but nothing? Okay, let's do it then. So what I'm going to do is close down this window. I think. Okay, close down the lease window. Now, so previously, when we had a tenant fill out the tenant application, let me see if I can find it. Maybe I didn't bring it. Oh, here it is. So in the past, a tenant would come in, they'd meet at a property, which we covered a lot of this in detail during the tenant screen class. They'd come in and they'd fill out a rental application. They'd kind of fill this one out. This is Brian's version of the rental application. I went ahead and I made you a new rental application because I didn't have permission to give you Brian's. Technically, in retrospect, you told me I did, but I didn't feel comfortable doing it. So I made my own rental application. So it looks like this, and that is going to be available as a download from the site. Once they fill out the application, it is your job then to go ahead and do screening. Go evaluate their application and see if they are qualified to rent your property. And so we talked about that in detail during tenant screening in the last class. Now, in the last class, what I didn't give you was this. It was basically the old Brian's version of the old rental application evaluation worksheet. I gave you a different one that we use to keep score using point systems. Brian does a little bit differently. He has his own little thing where he fills out a form, does applicant name, property verification dates, and everything else. And so I'll show you his so you can see it. But again, I do not have permission to give you this one. So I am making you what I consider to be a vastly improved version of this, combined with Brian's version of the rental application evaluation criteria. So if you remember when we did tenant screening, we told you you need to have written criteria of what your minimum qualification is for someone who applies to rent your property to say, I am now applying for your property. If I meet these minimum qualifications, you must rent the property to me because I am qualified based on your written criteria for fair housing compliance. This is really what it's all about, okay? So what we have now is this rental application evaluation criteria. And last year in 2016, for the local real estate investor club, we actually taught an entire class on this rental application evaluation criteria. This is not mine, this is Brian's, and he actually was willing to show and share an entire class where he went over basically his version of his evaluation criteria and how he looks at whether or not a tenant is okay or approved for being able to rent the property, okay? So he would use a combination of this and this form in order to keep track and see if somebody is qualified based on what they filled out with this rental application. So he'd use this, and then he'd call all their references and look at their bank statements and verify all the information, call their landlord references, call their work references, and make sure that someone is qualified, and then fill out this form and then decide whether or not they met the minimum criteria or did not. Okay. Part of the challenge I had, yes, Donna says, do you share your own written criteria with others? Oh, I have great news for you, Donna. Just wait and see. I'm going to show you some stuff here in a second. Yeah, it's like amazing. So basically, the challenge I have with Brian's stuff is this. How do you go from this sort of kind of nebulous out there criteria that says maximum number of pets allowed is 2, there's $150 non-refundable pet deposit, pet rent is blah, blah, blah. How do you go from this to sort of a checklist of, does this person qualify? And the way Brian does it is he kind of says, okay, on here, I'm going to call the current employer, who's their supervisor, what's their phone number, what's their salary, what's their time on job, would I rehire them, what's the comments on here, and whether or not they pass or fail this. Pass or fail, and goes down and decides whether or not they qualify as a whole for the sheet. So I like, first of all, let me back up a second and say, this stuff is better than what you will see anywhere else. So the level of detail Brian has gone into and taught in this class is amazing. Brian does an amazing job, and we're really, really fortunate to have someone like Brian who's willing to go and take the time, take 3 or 4 days to prepare a presentation on this and kind of compile his own stuff and share it with everybody and put it out there. And so we're really fortunate to have that. Now, it's amazing as is, but there's a gap for me. The gap for me is, let's say I wanted to, let's say Tammy and I, as a hypothetical, let's say Tammy and I are going to put together a little real estate partnership. We're going to go find another person locally, and we're going to decide, we're going to put up half the down payment, and another person's going to put up half the down payment. The other person's going to sign for the loan, and we are going to kind of do the tenant screening and put the tenant in there and manage the property. And we're going to all get together, two groups of us, and we're going to buy a property and manage it. So if I were going to say to Tammy, okay, Tammy, when people call in, when tenants call in, I want them to, do their screening part of it. We'll go meet them at the property. We'll see them at the property. They'll fill out the rental application. They'll give it in. And then I'm going to give you the rental application, and I'm going to have you process it. And then where the rubber meets the road, the implementation of this tenant evaluation criteria is the tricky part, is how does Tammy know step by step what to do in order to evaluate somebody, especially if you're relatively new, this is your first time doing it, or you only do this once a year for the first year and twice a year for the second year, because as nomads, we're buying one property every year. We're basically acquiring 10 properties over a period of time. So people aren't experienced at this. It's not like they've done 20 rental properties or 30 rental properties and they do this all day long like property managers. So Brian's coming from a place of extreme experience and knowledge, and he's teaching us an immense amount of great information and tools, but it's not perfect for the person who is just coming in and doing their first property. I think that there's a gap. I think that there's like okay, I'm overwhelmed. I don't understand this well enough. Can you please walk me through this sort of step by step, almost like paint by numbers or check it off as we go sort of thing. And we do this. I mean, I'm a big checklist guy. I was in the United States Navy, and I operated nuclear reactors in the Navy. And when you're operating nuclear reactors in the United States Navy, you don't do anything on the reactor without a checklist. And for good reason. You screw something up, it's a big deal. So you actually have to have this step-by-step detailed checklist, standard operating procedures that you use in order to do stuff. So when I came to the real estate world, I was looking around. I came in as a real estate broker and a real estate investor. I was looking on both sides. Are there real estate agent checklists in order for me to use and go to do this? And there's some really basic ones that a lot of brokerages use. It's primarily like, do you have these four documents in your file? Because you're going to need them for closing. And if you have those, you fill out this one additional form, you can get paid at the closing table. And it's like a one-page little checklist that they use. So that's in the real estate agent side. The real estate investor side, yeah, they'd have some little checklists like, okay, here are the 14 things you want to do when you're trying to get a property ready for rent. We'd see those are kind of floating around the interwebs or in courses and stuff like that. But what I didn't see is like, and I know this sounds bad because it's going to sound like horrible when I say it, because you're going to be like, why would I want to do that, James? Like an excruciating level of detail for you to be able to say, load up the web browser and pull up this page, look on this page and do that. It's not quite to that level, but it's very close. It is like, okay, do this first, do this next, do this next, do this next. If this, then do this. If this, then do these other 3 things, and that level of detail. Our real estate brokerage business, the process for buying a house is 26 pages of checklist items. That's how detailed it is. Not including the descriptions and email templates and all that other stuff. No. This is just the to-do items. Because when you drill down, I mean, it could be a 2-page email that you have where we send out when someone has a contract accepted, or here's a list of inspectors we recommend, or whatever it is. But it's like 26 pages of checklist. What I am trying to do for Nomads with tenant screening and mock tenant screening is I am trying to give you, to bridge that gap, to give you that tool that you need to go from old school, here's the evaluation worksheet, here's the evaluation criteria, which is light years ahead of what everyone else is already teaching and giving out. So feel like this would be amazing if you could just get this, but I am going to try to plus what Brian has already done. And Brian does an amazing job. And I hope he comes and listens to this video after the fact and realizes that we really do appreciate him. He does some fantastic stuff, okay? Now, and by the way, Brian, who is proficient, will not need to use the new tool that I'm about to give you, because for him, it feels cumbersome. It feels like it's too much. But if you've never done it before, it's perfect. It's just what you need. It's like the step-by-step stuff that you really are looking for most people that are coming in and feeling overwhelmed because they've never done it before, or they've only done it once before a year ago, or they want to make sure that they didn't forget something. This is what you really need. Okay, so without further delay, my puppy is underneath my desk, so I got to be careful I don't kind of like run over his tail or something. So, all right, here it is. The new rental application evaluation checklist, which is different than the rental application evaluation criteria and the rental application evaluation worksheet. Similar name, very different way to implement this. And by the way, I did, with Brian's permission, because I asked him before I started seeing all this stuff, I basically said to him, hey, can I take the stuff you have on your rental evaluation criteria sheet, this one, and can I mold that into the checklist system that I want to give to clients and other nomads nationwide so that they can actually implement what you're doing on here, okay? And so he gave me permission. And so here's what it is. This sheet is more like a checklist system of work through the rental application evaluation stuff and decide whether or not you are going to hire someone or not, not hire someone, whether you're going to allow them to rent your property or not, okay? So very similar to Brian's. We will accept as a tenant any person who submits an accurate, complete application for an available property, meets the standards set forth below. Oh, and as an aside, if somebody says, hey, listen, do you have written criteria for how you evaluate tenants, or they have questions about whether a tenant is qualified, what I'd like you to be able to do is to give them this, ideally in PDF, not Word. You'll get it in Word. You'll get it able to edit it so that you can edit your criteria. If your criteria is slightly different than mine, you will be able to go and edit yours, save it, and then print out copies in PDF from Microsoft Word and give it to your potential tenants who are asking about what is your criteria for evaluating a tenant, and they can go look at it and see. And so it's a written criteria in checklist form for them. All right, so meets the standards set forth below and agrees to abide by the rules and regulations set forth by management and its agents. We support the Fair Housing Act as amended, prohibiting discrimination in housing based on race, color, national origin, religion, sex, handicap, age, or familial status. Oh, as an aside too. So I got a cold when I went on my cruise. So if I start like coughing uncontrollably, it's been like a rough week with a chest cold and some tickles in my throat and cough. So I apologize in advance if I start having a coughing fit. Okay. Any false or misleading information supplied by applicant anytime is an automatic disqualification. So let me just tell you how we transfer this statement of any false or misleading information supplied by applicant anytime is an automatic disqualification into how I make it into a checklist. I'm going to jump all the way down to the very bottom of the form. I'm going to hit enter, the end button. I'm going to scroll up a little bit and I'm going to show you. So this section says false or misleading information. It's kind of a category. Any false or misleading information supplied by applicant at any time is an automatic disqualification. And so the checklist part of it is, did applicant provide any false or misleading information? If yes, it's a fail. They actually fail the screening process, is automatic disqualification. So you print this out when you're going to evaluate your tenant, and if they did provide false information, you would check this off, as a record of why they were disqualified. And you'd say you are disqualified, and you'd save a copy of this so that you have a record of it as to why they didn't qualify to rent your property. If they did pass, you just check this off and say, no, they didn't provide any false or misleading information. They pass, okay? So key terms. Fail is failing on that criteria. They may or may not still qualify overall. So for example, somebody could not provide a work reference. Maybe they're unemployed, maybe they're retired, so they could fail to provide that particular criteria, but there may be an override that allows them to still rent the property. For example, they may have more than 18 months worth of rent saved up in a savings account somewhere, which for me would be an adequate override over someone not having a current job. Imagine someone moving into town, not having a job lined up, but they've got 18 months of rent in the bank. That would override a failing criteria. So I'm just giving you the terminology I'm using. So when you see it fail later on in the form, you know what fail means. You know what pass means, pass on that criteria. You may or may not still qualify overall. So you could pass on one criteria and still fail overall if you did drugs or something like that. Qualified means you meet the minimum standard and are approved to rent. That's what qualified means. Disqualified means does not meet the minimum standard, either by failing certain criteria, that's automatic disqualification, or failing to pass enough criteria to qualify. Do not rent to them if they're disqualified. Okay, so those are my kind of key terms and definitions. Then we have a spot for applicant information. You write down the applicant name, property, and verification dates. And this, again, is very similar to Brian's. Yes, top applicant, property, and verification dates. So it's sort of like that. And then complete application. An application from every person 18 years or older who will be living in the property must be completed and signed. This is part of your criteria. So if you don't have this, you would change this in Microsoft Word. You'd say, okay, I only need an application from the adults or the, I don't need anyone who's children. Okay, if that's your criteria, that's fine. Just modify this so that it works. But I'm telling you what my criteria is and what I would recommend you use. And then you will be able to go modify this form in Word and then print it as PDF. All right, so must be completed. The application must be filled out completely with no blanks. And then we've got the little checklist. Is application complete and able to be processed? If yes, pass, continue to process application. If no, cannot process application until application is complete. So you would say, no, I'm done. I can't do anything. We're just stopping. And that's it. You just follow it. Application fee paid. The application fee must be paid before the application can be processed. There we go, checkbox. Has application fee been paid for each applicant? Yes, pass, continue to process application, or no, cannot process application until application fee has been paid. So far, it seems really, really straightforward and simple. You're like, James, this is a little bit too much. You're over the top for really simple stuff. Yes, for certain simple things, it seems over the top, but it gets more complicated. And here's sort of why we need to start doing that as we kind of come up with these additional things. So I'm just going to keep going now. Driver's license or valid state-issued photo ID. A copy of valid driver's license state-issued photo ID must accompany the application for each applicant over 18. Does a copy of a valid driver's license or state-issued photo ID accompany the application? If yes, pass, continue. If no, cannot process the application until it has one. Then we go to pet policies. And we just tell them, some of our policies because they're not like check mark yes or no. They're just fact. It's $150 non-refundable deposit per pet. Whatever your number is, you fill that in there. Pet rent is an additional $35 per pet per month. Fact, no checkboxes. All pets and animals must be always friendly to strangers. No vicious, unruly, difficult, or dangerous pets and animals allowed on property anytime in management and/or its agent's sole subjective discretion. So here's the dispute that's possibly coming up, right? You have somebody who has a dog on the property, and when you pet it, it growls. And they say to you, well, that's not vicious, unruly, difficult, or dangerous. And you say, au contraire. Any dog that's going to growl at me when I come and try to show your property or do anything like that is unacceptable. And so it's the management and/or the agent's sole subjective discretion. You get to decide, not the tenant. And you don't want to give them room to argue, oh wait, that's not vicious or unruly or difficult. Okay? So you kind of outline what your terms and policies are for people. A single fish tank not to exceed 20 gallons maximum quantity and size allowed. Non-refundable deposit and pet rent is waived if just fish. So that tells you, listen, I'm not charging the $150 pet deposit, a non-refundable pet deposit, or the $35 a month for a fish tank. Okay, I'm not doing that. All pets and animals must have current vaccinations. An applicant must provide this to management and/or its agent within 2 business days upon request. No visiting pets or animals at any time. You'd be surprised how many tenants say to you, oh, I don't have any pets. Then you go happen to stop by their property a month after to have the handyman fix something, and there's a dog there. And you're like, oh, no, that's not my dog. That's my sister's dog. I'm just watching the dog for the weekend. You're like, all right. And then, a week later, you go back there to follow up on the handyman work. Oh, the dog's still there, miraculously. And you go there another month later, and the dog's still there. So they just happen to be always having their sister's dog at the property. It's not their pet, and that's okay, right? No. So we actually say no visiting pets or animals anytime. You cannot watch your sister's dog at the house. Sorry. Your sister's going to need to board their pet, or you're going to go buy a house and have and then watch the dog for your pet, your sister. All right, continue on. Number of pets. The maximum number of pets allowed is 2. Does the applicant have more than 2 pets? If yes, fail. Automatic disqualification. They cannot rent the property if they have more than 2 pets. If not, pass. Continue processing. Pet visit. Did pet pass pet visit? This is where you go check out if it's friendly to strangers, if it's vicious, unruly, if it's chewing up the property that they're currently living in, and there's stuff on the doors and all that other stuff. All pets and animals must be always friendly to strangers. No vicious, unruly, difficult, or dangerous pets allowed on property at any time. Did each pet pass a pet visit by management or its agents? No, fail. Automatic disqualification. Yes, pass. Not applicable. This could be if they don't have pets, you mark off not applicable, and in that case, they would pass. Okay, now I'm going to pause here. Can you all see how this would be easier to just go through if you've never done it before as a step-by-step, check off the box until you figure out whether they fail or they pass on whether or not you'd rent the property to them? Can you see how this would be a better tool than just trying to say, all right, how do I go and implement this? How do I go and take the criteria and make adjustments and go step by step and then fill out this form? Is it easier in your mind? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should stop doing this. But in my mind, I think this is easier to do than what Brian has. Is that right? Feel free to kind of put it in chat or Q&A. I will continue while I wait. All right. Tenant occupancy period. A pass is given to the applicant's desired. Yeah, see, Donna says absolutely it gives you a record of why they pass or fail because memories fade when you're seeing many tenants. That's absolutely true. So it's that idea that it's checklist, step by step. You fill it out, then you have a written history of what each one did, why they failed, and where you got into the process. So it's all documented. I think it's perfect. All right, so pass is given if the applicant's desired occupancy period is at least as long as my desired occupancy period. Otherwise, it's a disqualification. So my desired occupancy period for this property is, and it gives you a spot to write in what you were looking for, because just like Donna said, it may be 3 years later when someone says, oh, the fair housing rule, we thought we were discriminated against, we're making a fair housing claim. I don't know what the statute of limitations is, but the theory is it could be later than when you actually thought you were doing than when you remember what the stuff is. So it gives you a chance to write it down right there. Does applicant's desired occupancy match or exceed my desired occupancy period? Yes or no? If it is yes, they pass. If no, they fail. Okay. Gross income. Here's where it gets a little more complicated. Applicant must pass gross income requirements as either self-employed or as an employee. So now you've got 2 pass. It's a choose your own adventure story. Are they self-employed or are they employed? Because the criteria for qualifying them is different for each. So proof of income as self-employed. If self-employed, applicant must provide 2 years of tax returns. In addition, a year-to-date summary statement is also strongly encouraged. It's not required. You could make it required. You could say, oh, I want 2 years tax returns, and I also want a year-to-date statement. If it's in like January, though, or February, chance of them having that is pretty low, right? They haven't even had a month. So that's why it's strongly encouraged for me. And if they have 2 years of tax returns, that's usually okay for me. Did applicant provide 2 years tax returns? No. Then does applicant have proof of large backup funds equaling at least 18 months of rent or more? If yes, they pass. So here it is. If they don't have tax returns, let's say they form a new business, which is essentially like they don't have any proof of income. They're sort of retired. I mean, in my mind, it's the same person who doesn't have a job. They have a business, but they can't prove that they have any income. So I'm willing to rent to someone in that situation if they have a bank account statement that they can show me 18 months of rent. Now, 18 months is arbitrary. You could have easily said 12 months, could have easily said 24 months. I just said, hey, listen, I want to see you have a significant amount of reserve money such that if you don't make money in your new business for 6 months, 12 months, that you have money that you have sitting around somewhere that you can do this. And so I said 18 months. If they do, great, they pass. If not, they fail, automatic disqualification. They can't provide 2 years tax returns, and they don't have 18 months worth of reserves. They're done. I'm not going to rent to you. You don't qualify. Okay. Did they apply, applicant, provide 2 years tax returns? No. Then they fail if they didn't have the backup funds. So it's either no, but they did have it, so on and so forth. So no, they fail, automatic disqualification. Oh, there's a typo in there. I got to fix some typos. Or yes, they pass, continue processing application to verify the income. So this one's just asking, did they provide the tax returns? And if not, kind of deal with a what-if situation. If they do, then you continue processing the application, verify it. So important to note, many self-employed people take a lot of deductions, so you may have to look harder at tax returns and talk with that applicant if they're close on income being three times rent. Okay. Proof of income as an employee. So the employees, instead of doing tax returns, we want the latest W-2 and 2 months of pay stubs. Similar idea though. Did applicant provide latest W-2 and 2 months of pay stubs? No. Do they have the money to do it? If yes, continue. If not, they fail. Or if they didn't provide those two, they automatically fail. If yes, they continue processing to verify the income. Regardless of whether they're self-employed or an employee, the income from the documentation above, unless overridden by an amount in savings, must meet the minimum income requirements below or meet an acceptable override. So important note, self-employed people must show adjusted gross income for the year on their tax returns as 3 times the yearly rent on each of the 2 years of tax returns, and ideally the year-to-date financials. Many self-employed people take a lot of deductions, so you may have to look harder at tax returns and talk with applicant if they're close on becoming on income being 3 times rent. So here's a little bit more of a complicated one. Does applicant meet any of the following past criteria for income for either self-employed or employment income? So it doesn't matter which one you're verifying the source of. It either needs to be W-2 and the pay stubs, or it needs to be tax returns. Yes, 3 times amount as income on their own. Yes, 3 times rent amount as income with other applicants, so they qualify with someone else's help. Yes, Section 8 applicant with voucher for full rent and utility and pet rent, the full monthly rent amount, so they could be Section 8, and that would be a qualification for us. Yes, Section 8 where applicant pays portion themselves, documented and allowed by the Housing Authority. Or no, is applicant able to pass with any of the following adjustments? And then if they say no to this, then do they meet any of the adjustments? Yes, a co-signer with the ability to pay. Yes, lease payee agreement for someone else to pay their rent who qualifies. Yes, prepay rent to reduce monthly amount to meet passing guidelines. So if they, if they would only qualify, rent is $1,800 a month, and they could only qualify for $1,000 a month, I might be willing to say to them, if you pay me the $800 a month for the entire 12 months up front, I will qualify you because you only need to pay the $1,000 a month for rent from then on. Okay, so that would be a criteria for me where I would make an exception. I'd override it. Proof of large backup funds equaling at least 18 months of rent or more, or damage deposit with equaling 3 times the normal damage deposit. I probably am going to remove this. Okay, Brian has it in his, but I actually don't like it. I think that why would I have to require 18 months of rent when I could just say you're going to give me 3 months of damage deposit? I don't know. I think I'd rather see them have this money set aside. I don't think this is enough to overcome not being able to document that you can pay for rent, okay? But you can adjust these. You can do whatever criteria you want. You'll be able to go and modify them. Or no, applicant is not able to pass income requirements, automatic disqualification. Or no, applicant is unable or unwilling to agree to adjustments, any of these types of overrides. Or no, Section 8 voucher, applicant is unable to qualify otherwise and offers to pay difference outside of Section 8 program. That's an automatic disqualification, okay? So you can see how this all works. And I'm not going to spend the time to go into crazy detail about all these different things, but you'll see that it's just this same checklist model going all the way through with stuff. And here's like the employment one and being able to fill in information and stuff like that. So this is where we are heading with this form. And I've only gotten through, Brian's is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 full typed pages of criteria, plus a single page for the evaluation part. And I've only gotten through adding almost the first 2 pages to what I've done. So I've got a long way to go in order to make these modifications, but it is heading in that direction. And it will be very detailed, as you can see. These are all the sections I have yet to add. Okay, but you can see some of the stuff on here about how we do pass-fail. Okay, so short class tonight, but that is what I wanted to kind of go over and share with you so that you can see it. If anyone has any questions, I will let you ask those questions now, but this is coming. It is not going to be tomorrow because this takes a buttload of time in order to do, but this is where we are heading with this process and these tools for you. And then Tammy will be doing some screening and making sure that it's working well before we release it out, and I'll just make adjustments as we go and people give me feedback on it. Any final questions before we end the call? All right. Then that is going to be it. Really short class tonight. Just wanted to show you some of the stuff on here. Thank you all who came to class tonight, and I didn't do any promotion, so I apologize if people didn't think there was a class tonight. You're very welcome, Donna. And so I'll go ahead and end the call here now, but I definitely appreciate it, and I will put the video up as soon as the video is done. That way people can see it, and you'll be able to kind of see what's coming. This will be posted at some point in the future, not anytime like tomorrow or the next day, on the Nomad website. So be looking out for that in the future, and I'll do an email. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. I will talk to you all soon. Bye-bye for now.